Hello?
William, hey, this is Jared Kinsman.
Hey, Kinsman, you called me back. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm you back, man.
I know we're on good rapport, but I do get a little worried. So
Say again.
I just get really worried. I've had we'll call it PTSD of all the other people not calling me back.
Can I give you some advice and some pointers?
Sure.
Can I tell you something?
Sure, fire away.
So I'm listening to you loud and clear about looking into your concerns, and I will give it the best look that I can. That's my promise to you. What I ask for you in return is just be accepting of whatever I come up with, and just trust that it is that whatever I do, you're going to be understanding of to a certain degree. I don't want you to like it, but I do want you to be willing to be understanding about what I come up with.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm willing to listen to you, and definitely willing to kind of look into what your concerns are. So, I pulled all your police reports that you've had here with the police contact over however many years you've been here in Fort Collins. And I'm looking through those to see which cases you're talking about. Because the problem is, when you gave me your message the other day, you didn't give me a case number regarding the officers that you had contact with.
Okay.
So I got to figure out what that is. And then I got to track down a little bit of information on those. I also spoke with Carrie Daggett from the city attorney's office about your meeting, so I have some perspective about that as well, and her office about that. And then, so I didn't speak with Carrie. I spoke with one of the other city attorneys. No, I did talk to Carrie. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And so I'm looking at all your stuff for you and your brother, and I'll definitely put the right eyes on it. And you have my word that, William, if we need to do things better in regards to the things that you brought to our concerns, we'll do them better. We will do them better. The thing that I'm going to put in perspective for you just a little bit going into this without knowing what the outcome is going to be, some of the things that you're bringing up are not necessarily complaints where we have policies that said the officer did something wrong unless knowingly did it. There is something as far as officers acting in good faith, and that they acted in good faith, but they got something wrong. The Supreme Court has some leeway for police officers to make mistakes because it happens. We're human just like everybody else.
Yeah, that would be arguable probable cause. But if the law is clearly established and I can show that my rights were violated by clearly established law, then yeah, there's also courts called 42 USCs for when people don't have any lawful justification.
I understand, but you have to be able to prove that the officer did it that they willfully violated your civil rights.
Oh yeah, actually, it's interesting you say that. I've wanted to clarify this for a while with police in general. The intent is one thing. That's not actually an element. Basically, the only elements of a 42 USC are if an objectively reasonable cop, which is one that knows all of governing law, would have done something different. And so, basically, it's just a very cut and dry standard that cops are held against. That even if they had good intentions, if they simply just didn't know the law, and it's an established law that they were supposed to have known, then that simply is the case right there, that they just didn't know the law, and that's their liability. Even if they tried.
And that's where we address those problems with additional training and information and it happens all the time where we're brought forth new information every day in police work across the country of how we can do our jobs better. And there has to be, and the courts have recognized that there has to be a level of leniency for that learning process to occur for police, because the demands that are on a police officer are far greater than a lot of other people that work in public service because of the number of things that we're being asked to know about and enforce.
Oh, yeah. No, that makes sense.
There's that reasonableness on the citizens' parts too, and that's what the Supreme Court kind of addresses in the past. So
let me put it this way real quick, just to clarify.
Kind of conversation about this, what I can tell you is, I'm looking at your stuff. If you have more information that you'd like me to consider, please send it to me. If you don't want to send me any additional information as far as written information, I will go off of what I have here and make my decisions as far as what I see regarding if there's a complaint to be investigated or not. Okay?
Sure. Okay, so yeah, a couple things to clarify. Basically, our contention or difference of legal theory might be just on this note. Basically, what we're concerned about is where police officers and DAs essentially end up kind of illegally using the court system and people and picking them up illegally to learn the lessons that they probably should have just learned, or they definitely should have learned without picking them up. Like basically, you guys are learning on the fly using the mistakes you make of people and then kind of thanking them for their time, when there are definitely ways in which, you know, an objectively reasonable cop wouldn't do that, and therefore there's that standard. I mean, you guys do know that obviously you guys can write a bad ticket and illegally pick somebody up, right?
Well, it happens.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where the courts come into play, to be able to evaluate whether the charge was appropriate or necessary, or if the probable cause exists. And if it didn't exist, the court throws it out.
Yeah, well,
that's part of that due process. And you'd experienced that in a way where you had tickets thrown out because there wasn't a probable cause to arrest you or charge you with it.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily always mean, and I haven't looked at each case to be able to tell you one way or another on these ones yet, though. But hear me out. That doesn't necessarily mean, though, that the officer acted in a way that was meant to violate your civil rights. Other than they acted in good faith, but they might have acted they had some information that wasn't accurate in their minds.
Yeah, and so that's why we always have the elements to go down. And basically, the best way I've always kind of formulated it is if the court falls apart because of an element that wasn't correctly identified in the streets, no amount of good faith is going to fix some cop that basically didn't actually like allege an element. Like basically in charging documents, like a warrant affidavit, in order for me to defend myself adequately, all of the elements have to at least be present or, in some way alleged, so that I can refute it and stuff. And so if somebody doesn't actually even allege the elements at all, then naturally that's no probable cause, and naturally it's going to fall apart in court for the same reason.
Here's the thing. I'll look into what you're asking me to look into. And I know that a lot of these cases you've already had a certain level of review that's taken place, as far as like some of the cases that have been looked at. They've been evaluated by supervisors, and there has been no policy violations that were found in those cases. The one that you brought up to my attention the other day, I will tell you, if there's additional information you'd like to send me, by all means, send it to me. And other than that, yeah, just what I would ask you is just, and here's my concern, and I'm going to ask you to just please be a reasonable citizen to the degree that you're not trying to entice an officer into a situation just to try to get them hung out to dry, and that you're being responsible in the sense that that's not the intention of your actions behind those contacts, and that your actions are more above board than that. That's all I'm asking of you, okay?
Yep, and I was actually going to bring that up with you. When you guys say that I'm being disingenuous or that I have bad intentions, what exactly, what do you guys have to go off of?
Well, did you not tell the city attorney that you were setting up a Trojan horse to try to lure in the officers into making mistakes?
Oh, wow. This is why we need to get you guys the actual audio. Thank you for clarifying that. The entire reasoning behind my concept of a Trojan horse, or of a sting, or of a turd in the punch bowl and so forth, is that okay, I have to actually word this a certain way so that we don't get off the wrong foot from here on out. When somebody knows all of their rights and knows all of the laws, and they know that they can go out there and get close, I'm not insinuating that all cops are bad. I'm only insinuating that if there happens to be a bad cop that doesn't know his job, that he would go ahead and pick me up. David and I happened to be behind that fence earlier that day, and several cops drove by. We don't know if they just didn't have enough time, but chances are, based upon the takedown notice being sent by Rob Mosby, that Rob Mosby's kind of that other cop. And so basically the Trojan horse was literally to explain that we needed a case to prove to the world that we get picked up without elements on a kind of a nigger lynch level, where you guys say probable cause, and you're claiming that I'm trespassing, but then you actually didn't go and actually see what the property was or see what the permission was. And so naturally, I know that I'm going to get picked up if the cops don't know their rights. And I don't know what else to call it, but it's not disingenuous, because I didn't go out there with the express intention of catching dirty cops. I was fully expecting someone to drive by and wave at me too.
Or hear us out and be like,
wow,
it's a bad fence.
Yeah. Honestly, we were expecting a cop to drive by and send a 2384 for us, because that's the right of way that someone's supposed to be enforcing.
Well, I would caution you on calling people dirty cops. The thing is what I hear you saying is that you're authorized by a citizen to make as many mistakes as you want and be considered that you don't want to be discriminated against, but yet you're willing then to turn right around and label somebody as dirty who might very well be a very good police officer. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, a couple things. When you say mistakes, I'm not making any mistakes. And when I say dirty, I only say dirty because of a problem that my brother and I have caught in the actual judicial system, and this is why we have audio for it, is we catch cops regularly covering up and lying and being unsuccessful about it, and it's always geared around an image problem to kind of not look bad that they accidentally pick somebody up illegally. No one's ever bad intentions, but when we actually get cops that saw us and then we find out that they didn't read their statutes or didn't even look at a map and we're like entirely on private property, I find, and also too, that one situation down in Westminster, I had offered maps and statutes, and they denied it. And so there comes a certain point where a cop is going to cover. I mean, you know what racketeering activities are: perjury, so forth and so on. We call those activities dirty activities. We don't actually discriminate against dirty cops. We don't actually identify cops as dirty.
Case. We want these cops to get help for their behaviors that are wrong.
And that's my promise to you. Is it? If I identify some areas where we need to improve some training, I'll do that. That's my job.
Yeah, no. When you say improve the training, what we're trying to say is this stuff. This is stuff that is a 143-year-old plat that if you haven't been training people on in the first place, then it's not. I don't want to call it training because training sounds like it's a natural thing that occurs as information comes in. This is all old stuff that you guys were supposed to know a long time ago.
It's
so
a map.
But here's the thing,
Yeah.
Hey, William and David, what's a mailing address if I had to send you some stuff?
Oh man, we would love to see some stuff. 305 West Magnolia Street, Magnolia.
Is that here or down there?
It's in Fort Collins, 80521, and it's PMB, stands for Private Mailbox 221.
PM. What was that? Just PM.
PMB, Paul Mary Bravo.
Okay, PMB. What was his numeric on that?
221.
221.
It's considered
Hey,
our
so,
residence.
I'll keep working on this. If you have some information, by all means, please mail it to me. And like I said, I'll give a proper inquiry into this, William. And I've never had a problem with you working with you, so I don't intend to have one now. Just if you have a question, please just give me a call and not anybody else here.
Sure, no, that's understandable. The kind of the main question still stands. How many cases do I have? How many cases do you guys have for internal affairs reports?
So internal affairs reports, I have one case number. For criminal cases with you, we have 19 criminal cases that we have with you here.
Well, wow, that's more than what I even have. I'm not even done alleging. There's like a harassment and obstruction, all sorts of little stuff in there. Sure. But what I'm trying to get at ultimately here, of the reason why I called you back, is because eventually, Murphy and Horton and so forth, Jackie, they never called me back after what I was under the impression of was a full report of 6 issues. And so my actual new issue to you right now, the one that I'm really trying to truly report, is that I believe that, and I have evidence, or that I'd like you to go over, that I believe Horton specifically, since I spent the longest time with him, that he had knowledge of these 6 that I had reported, and basically he did the same thing as you. I have a lot of other officers telling me that they can't write, that they basically required me to write it down, and I kept telling them that's not the internal affairs policy. And so we never actually resolved any of that, and that's why I called you today, is because if you really do say that there's only one internal affairs document open in my name, I literally have reported very specifically 6 events. In fact, if there's not even one about a bond issue, I got called back saying that was opened and shut by Crumbaker. And so if you don't even have that, I mean, that's my whole point. You guys buzzed all my complaints on step 1. I really would need to. I need to submit all this evidence to your boss, because technically you said the same thing to me of needing to write it down. So you guys are all kind of compromised on that one rule of your policy of not needing to write it down. And the fact that I've like 5 events that about 4 months ago I started reporting to you guys, and they've never changed and stuff. And so, do you know how I can report Murphy or Horton for not doing their internal affairs job?
Well, let me do my job and look into seeing if that's even a concern. If I don't think it's a concern, it's not going to be documented.
Sure. Yeah, and the best way to document that too, by the way, is to go ask them and see if what they said. If they said that, oh yeah, William didn't report anything at all, don't feel like that would be a place to close the investigation, because technically I'm still trying to. You're going to have to leave this one open because I have audio on my side that I still have to get to you of the actual reports themselves, so that you can have something to compare against, so you can see if they really did do their job or not. Otherwise, you can't just trust them if they're going to lie to you.
Well, without any information that you have yet to send me, I can't do much other than look at what I have and talk to the people I have about it. And I'm not requiring you. Let's get one thing very correct here, William, before you start putting words in my mouth. Is I'm not requiring you to put it in writing. I asked you if you would, because it'd be easier for me to evaluate in that sense. You're choosing not to. That's your choice, and I will do what I have to do without that. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. That was a clarification with you, which did work. What I'm saying is that the previous officers, that was not a clarification.
Hold on. The only reason I'm asking it for it in writing is because it makes it a lot easier for me to properly evaluate what your concerns are when I have a document in front of me that I can refer to, versus some of the discussions that we have that have a tendency to just kind of go on and don't really get to the detail of the matters over a long conversation. Your written document is going to be far more concise and to the point than us just talking about it. That's all I asked for.
Yep, and that is exactly why I'm reporting that Horton did not take my complaints. He said the same thing.
Hold on. Let me speak, please.
Apologize.
If that's not your decision to want to do that, that's fine with me, William. I don't care, and I will look into it the best I possibly can. But at the same time, I can't have you then later on down the road crying foul when you didn't provide me something that would have helped me out in the inquiry to this, and it is an inquiry, not an investigation at this time, when I asked for it and you refused.
Yeah, now this is tough where I'm going to have to get something of evidence to you guys, either audio or writing, because we're that thick. But initially it was just simply audio that I was, or not audio, but verbal conversations that I had with them. And so, yeah, obviously, since we're thicker in it, we're going to have to show you proof.
Let's wrap this conversation up. I'll finish by telling you this. I'm looking into your concerns. I will evaluate if there's anything for me to have investigated or not. If there's not, I'll send you a memo that says why. And if there is, I'll send you a memo what it is we're looking into. You understand?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
Care.
I got one more question for you. Just one more, I promise. It's a very close, very simple question. Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay. The bench area, the east side of Safeway, is that public property?
I'm not getting into discussions about legal things. I think that was settled already with you in the courtroom, if I'm correct.
Actually, no, it was never settled. No. And it actually has nothing to do with court. I was just asking you personally. Like, do you know if that area is public land?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you right now off the top of my head because that's not my purview at this point in time. And I couldn't tell you if it was. I thought it was at one point in time after there was some confusion about it with the city and the Safeway. Because that was like a point of contention I know that you had, because it wasn't there an incident where you hopped a fence in front of some officers and went over there, or something happened regarding that?
Potentially.
And that ticket was dismissed?
Actually, no. That's literally what I'm complaining about. That was my sting, and it looked like it worked. Truth be told, I have audio of other officers just like you thinking that it was something so obvious that it happened in the past and it was all resolved and that it's over and dismissed now because everyone learned that it's public. Kinsman, that's literally my entire complaint, is that it's still going right now. So,
will you at least let me look into this stuff without?
Yeah, please.
Without poking the bear, kind of, so to speak.
Sure, but just to let you know, I just want to let you know for future reference that I do have the whole reason why you were all concerned about me recording and stuff like that was because I get, or not concerned, but you kind of mentioned it as like a potential reason as to how I'm like lawsuit scamming and stuff like that.
You have every right to record this. I'm not concerned about it.
But the reason I wanted to clarify as to why I record is specifically for these types of situations where I had asked you once upon a time if you said it was public, you said outright, and then I asked you again and you wouldn't answer, and then now you're answering that you won't answer. And so we just simply do that with all the cops out there, just to simply see if there is potentially an objectively reasonable cop out there to compare against.
We don't like getting the runaround.
And we don't like getting the runaround, so we kind of play like a ghost protocol or a yuppie protocol. I'll call into places and pose like as an anti-abortionist to see if they'll treat me differently than a homeless guy that's standing on that same corner.
And it works.
And it works. It works every time.
Case was dropped.
And in that court case, it was dropped. And so that's the audio we're trying to get to you guys, is that there's kind of a yuppie protocol that you guys think that you can use to protect yourselves with, to lawyer up with, when, you just kind of summed it up. You literally proved my case right there that it's public. I jumped it because everyone thought they could think it was private.
It's public. It's always been
public.
Never been private.
And just so you know, and in terms of how you guys can know for a fact, for your own benefit, for your jobs and stuff, if you can, use this as a grain of salt with the investigation of one of the claims here, the 16 CR 208, is that the definition of right of way is in your municipal code. It's 1742, and then you go down to your city surveyor department, and it's a 100-foot plat. And it's always been that way. In fact, you go online to citydocs.fcgov.com. You can look up original town plat. You just type in those words. And you can also look up Robertson Pearsall project. And so all these are kind of the tools.
The property owner says it's not.
Yeah, so we got the audio of the property owner and stuff like that. But basically, all these tools are supposed to be you guys use at your disposal. And so if you can determine that is public property on the street yourself, you just kind of became our objectively reasonable cop. And that's why we called you guys, is so that you can go double check the paperwork of 16 CR 28, see that it's a total nightmare railroad frivolous lawsuit, and then drop it. If not, at least use your imagination of how it's going to end up in court. And I'm probably not going to get convicted of private property trespassing, because it's not private property and they don't have any actual evidence of that. So
was your case closed on that one though?
Nope, still open. And by the way, just to let you know, I for some of my cases, I purposely leave them open and not put in my little motions to dismiss, just to see if I can go bowling and kind of get rid of more cronies and stuff. So I can go put in a motion to dismiss. Not one of the elements are ever met on any of the statutes. It's really easy.
Our own parents don't even believe us.
But yeah, the whole reason why we did it is so that we can kind of get a gauge for if people are kind of kangaroo courts. I don't know if you've ever heard that term, but like my parents, they basically thought I was trespassing, and everybody's thought I trespassed. And so I kind of just want to invite everyone to trial to see the railroad as it is, because it's obviously not private property, So I didn't want to, let's put it this way, the reason I jumped the fence is because in the past we've been trying to work with you guys bureaucratically and just ask questions, and on the streets with the Giddings that night with unlawful conduct, I told him that it wasn't designated, and I told him the streets department, and then he still went ahead and ticketed me. And so the reason why I didn't do this pseudo good faith of letting you guys know with my takedown notice before I jumped the fence is because that's the whole point, is that you guys should be knowing your law. And actually, Kinsman, I apologize. This is a really good way to explain it. My brother and I have been trying to prove these concepts for a while now, and we actually have an example that we're trying to get up on YouTube too, as well as everything else. It was a situation in Walmart in Commerce City where kind of Walmart, they have their own receipt checking policy. And it's kind of like a police policy, if you don't show your receipt, then we're going to do an investigation on you. But they're not supposed to actually detain people, because just not showing a receipt by itself is not actually proof of any sort of guilt of evidence of shoplifting. And so their policies just simply ask, and then if you say no, you keep walking. They're going to go look up some video footage on their computers, and then maybe go call a cop in, get a warrant or something. What they're not supposed to do is detain you. Or in this case, I had a cop that I was walking past on the way out, and he saw that I didn't want to show my receipt. He decided to go right ahead and detain me, and then started this whole guilty until proven innocent kind of backwards investigation. He went ahead, asked for the receipt. I said, hey man, I'm just exercising my rights. He's like, well man, if you got nothing to hide, why don't you just show it? And I was like, I'm exercising my rights. And then he said, well, I fought world wars for rights. And basically that's where the defamation starts. And then Walmart, before you know it, they came back while I'm being detained, and their employees said that I took the cheese. It was a package of cheese. I definitely paid for the cheese. I just had the receipt in my pocket. And so they went ahead and kind of wrote me the receipt. And if you show your receipt beforehand, it kind of defeats the whole purpose. If you fight with them about the receipt, it kind of defeats the whole purpose. But if you just wait for them to just go ahead and just do their job, don't even try and stop them. He went ahead and wrote me that ticket. I walked all the way to the back of the store. It was a non-custodial arrest, but it would have been an arrest. And then at the very end, right after he gave me my ticket, I went ahead and showed him the receipt. And, they lost their shit. They're like, why didn't you show it to me before? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, come on, man, I'm exercising my rights. And obviously they took it. I let them look at it for a second. They wouldn't give it back to me right away. So I kind of felt like I was being detained there. But nevertheless, they dropped the ticket and it was all gravy. But I did it to prove a point that people shouldn't be setting up profiles to pseudo lynch people guilty until proven innocent, and then basically never let them actually prove their innocence.
It's called a frivolous lawsuit.
So it's called a frivolous lawsuit, and we're tired of people setting up profiles, blanket policies, thinking they got people. And so the larger complaint that we had with all these smaller cases that we tried to explain to Horton and so forth, one of the internal affairs policies says that you're supposed to mention if it's discrimination related, and all these ones are discrimination related, where we were in the types of zones or profiles of other homeless people, and
box scores mentioned.
And basically, you just kind of lose your shit. You see, with Park Curfew North College, you'll see the video where they just saw us so quickly that they forgot to go over their other elements and stuff like that. And so, real quick, as our final example for the Occupy Jefferson protest, a couple months later, we'll get you the video and evidence of that. But we basically called in the cops to some other people that were hanging out inside and near Jefferson Park.
Pizza.
So there were like 15 kids eating pizza, and they were kind of the more yuppie type and not the homeless type. And so we called them up, and the cops said, yeah, we just removed from the park, let them be on the sidewalk. And I said, what do you mean the sidewalk? And he's like, dispatch was like, dude, that's like city property. Like, what are you talking about?
Giddings said that was park.
And so that was the one that Giddings said was park, using the map for the Parks Department and stuff. And so all we did with the stings, all we do with the ghost protocols and the phone calls and the recordings of the other side of it,
catching poor races,
is just to see if the objectively reasonable cop gets compromised just because of racism and lynchism and homeless discrimination. And so all these elements are stuff that, we've caught people going through with good faith naturally during the day, and then when the lights go out at night, time to remove homeless people.
Guns blazing.
So thanks for listening. It's really hard to get these concepts across, but I can tell you we've been trying to avoid you guys in general, but once we realize that all we have to do is exercise our rights, and if we get caught in your crossfires, that we can just keep exercising our rights, it's probably going to look like we're lawsuit scamming, but every one of these elements are not technicalities. We're pretty big. Like, we used maps not to be in the parks, and we told the cops that it wasn't designated and stuff like that. So
keep in mind, William, as you go through this process, and this is kind of what I tell everybody, even people that I work with here, your perspective is a matter of opinion as far as what you think is a big deal and what's not. And so as I start looking through this stuff, I will be the one that'll assess what we're going to do with this information. And what I'll ask of you is that you just trust what kind of I come up with, and and that's my question. Do you trust that I'll put some effort into this and make sure that your rights are being looked into and your concerns are being looked into?
I do trust you, but I also know that there's a lot of cronies that are in the system that may be impersonating cops without even realizing it. And so,
well, let me do my job, sir, and then I will get back in touch with you. And if you have some more information, I'm sure you have my email address. You can send it to me, and you can mail me stuff, and I'll look at it and include it to whatever else I look into here. All right?
Sure thing. Absolutely. Thank you. One last sort of easier way to state the last question I was trying to get at. I'm sorry. It's very hard to get this far with cops, so this is awesome. This is what I wanted to ultimately leave you with, is if somebody's walking down the street and they're in the right-of-way, just in a sidewalk or on the street itself, are you allowed to pick them up without lawful justification? If they're just walking down the street, you would need to have some sort of reason to remove them, and usually the reason would be like they're behind a fence that has a permit. And so the whole point is that you're not supposed to be able to literally go down, walking down the street and pick somebody up. And so I'm just saying that rhetorically speaking so that you can get an idea for what you need to research on 16CR28. This is just rhetorical. I'm not asking for your input right now. But I'm just concerned that I was walking down the street in my right-of-way and I got picked up by police with some crazy charges about some private property crap and stuff like that.
All right, you take care.
So, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Take care.
You put it alive.
Sure. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.